My name is Prendergast. I'm a partner with Frontline Ventures, and we're lucky enough today to have on a panel Dimitris from Transifex, Nicolas from Algolia, and Ray from Dessaigne. And the title of our panel today is Don't Fuck Up, Scaling into the US. So, I wanted to start off maybe just by getting a couple of minutes of context from each of you on where you are today, so that people know the lens through which you look at your mistakes of the past. So maybe, Dimitris, you might start. Just give us a kind of a high-level overview of the company.
Sure. Transifex started from Greece, like humble beginnings. We were today 35 people. We have 2 teams in Menlo Park, California, Silicon Valley, and Greece, Athens. We have our engineering and product team there. So the team is split half and half. So sales, marketing, leadership, business development is anything customer-facing basically is in California. So we started in Greece, actually a very small city. So we actually scaled into Athens first. So we moved the office to Athens to tap into the talent pool there. And when we first started having serious customers in the US, especially in California, I started going more and more frequently there to sell and get feedback on the product market fit and everything, get advice, get customer feedback. And that's when I started spending more and more time there, and we realized, okay, we need to open up a sales office here because customers need to talk to us.
Okay.
So we did that when we were still, around 100 customers, and the team was, I think, 18 people, 15 people.
And today you are how many?
35.
35. Great. Nicolas.
Algolia, so we do search as a service. So we help developers really to deliver great search experience. You may have used us on Periscope, Twitter, from Twitter, Medium, Twitch, other companies like that. We are about 60 people today, spread across San Francisco and Paris. So we are headquartered in San Francisco, and our product team is in Paris. 2,000 customers from everywhere, like 100 countries. But the big majority of them are in the US, like it's 60% of our business.
Okay, great. Ray?
Dessaigne, so we're a forecasting solution based in Salesforce and Dynamics. We just help sales teams get really efficient and hit that number predictably. So the story of Dessaigne is probably about 6 years old. We started here, you can tell by the accent, not too far around the corner in Dublin, and looking forward to sharing all the mistakes we made on that journey around expanding out or scaling into London, New York. The company is now split between Dublin and San Francisco. All R&D is based here in Dublin. All sales and marketing is in San Francisco. And so, yeah, looking forward to bearing all. Almost like it's going to be like a therapy session.
Great. So in true Irish fashion, we're going to start with something a little bit religious, the confession. Everybody is on this panel because they've been successful at scaling their company into the US, but yet, they themselves know that there was a lot of bumps along that route. And I asked each of them to kind of prepare one of their fuck-ups that happened along that journey and help us kind of understand the impact that had on the business. And I promised that if they were good enough and honest enough, that I'd share one of ours as well. So maybe, Dimitris, start with you.
Yeah, I mean, when you first go to the US, I think, at least in our case, I started researching and getting more information from people and starting to get advice. So I think there exists this 80-20 rule where actually it's more like 95-5%, where 5% of the people have the best advice, but 95% of the people can help you just a little bit more. So I ended up trusting, a few people from 95%. We hired some wrong people, and that ended up costing us a lot. We burned $1 million for no significant reason that didn't affect the company as much as it should. So it was a pretty big fuck up. I mean, we had to change a lot of things in the company, admit our mistakes. We had to lay off people. We had to basically come to Jesus. There was a come to Jesus moment that was really harsh.
And how did you know when you found those kind of 5% of people who could really have an impact on your business? How did you know that was different to what you'd been hearing before?
I think those are people that are willing to do it with you. I would say. They're willing to jump into, the lion's den and actually help you out, truly help you out, and they just get it. When you start talking to these people, it's like dating, right? At some point, you get this click, so you get that this person just gets it, right? Whereas you meet with a lot of, with customers, it's easier because you understand whether the customer has a fit. When you're talking, for example, with investors or advisors, it's not always clear that, this person gets it. Maybe I'm wrong. So my biggest advice is to actually stay true to yourself and trust what you're doing. Be humble, but confident at the same time. There's a difference between being humble and confident versus changing your mind all the time because you get all this advice.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. Ray, maybe we'll go next to you.
So I think for us, it was at the early days, we got a number of kind of big customers, which, we were very quick to kind of accelerate on sales, and we kind of expanded very quickly into London, New York, and it wasn't even San Francisco, it was the Bay Area. And the real challenge with that was just assuming that you could kind of outsource how you recruit the team, outsourcing the trust of someone to grow those sales for you, without really kind of unpacking actually how those kind of first couple of deals had got over the line and through founders' blood, sweat, and tears. So it's kind of going from that, melting pot of people who are just in the trenches together to then saying, yeah, we've got it. And, despite all the best laid plans in, whether it's business plans or these strategy documents that you share internally saying, this is all going to work out and chevrons go to the right and the graph goes up and to the right and everything looks great. The reality is, and I'd say most companies would admit that they do fuck up, and everyone fucks up. And the question is really around whether you're able to adapt to that and whether it's a cataclysmic fuck up or whether it's just, it's move on and hire. So, for us...
what did it mean? Like, talk specifically about those hires. What did you do?
Yeah, so for us it was, early on was around the product market fit, and we had traction with these early customers, and we believed that this was, consulting, financial services, banking. So we said New York is going to be our US headquarters. It was convenient that it was 5 hours away as opposed to the 8 hours when we were kind of evaluating it against San Francisco. And the reality was we kind of hired a lot of good people maybe in isolation, but we didn't create the support structure for them to be successful and therefore for it to work. So
how did that play out?
So fundamentally it's, leadership needs to be there. Where as soon as you set up a satellite office, it's just no excuses and, hands up, I made that mistake. I eventually relocated the family to New York, and at that point realized we needed to relocate to San Francisco. My wife is very patient. So
those hires that you made, how did you make them? Did you do it?
So we use recruitment firms. They had the studded CV that, star-studded CV that really said everything. And I think going back to Dimitris' point, it's, it is like dating. You should trust your gut a little bit more. And really, there was an example earlier on by Hampus to say, go off on a ski trip. You're making such an investment, such a gamble around these key hires, particularly the first few hires.
How many of those, let's say the first 5 hires in the US, how many of them were there 18 months later?
None.
Okay.
So of the ones that we kind of placed over there from the Irish office, they continued. And, I think they were really, continuing the culture. And then after that, we kind of realized not just, where we needed to be in product market fit, the customers, the location, all of these things started. But the reality was just by hiring a series of, hired guns or just individuals was just not going to fly without that continuity of the kind of team and culture. So, example we have, I know you're primed for an example. So, we definitely lost millions of dollars as well. The example we had is we had a guy in New York, and it wasn't actually New York, it was in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia and New York, or Manhattan is not the same place. So, for that individual to be effective and be kind of front and center with customers was just never set up to succeed. So, the famous comment was, Ray, you can't shoot moose from the lodge. And it always stuck in my mind. It was kind of going,
If you take nothing else away from the
Yeah,
panel
so just,
today,
you know,
just
what did
remember-
Ray say? Never, you can't shoot moose from the lodge. So it's always stuck with me that one of
Yeah.
these great kind of comments. But yeah, so just
Okay.
continuity of the culture,
Yeah.
leadership being there, and making sure that you don't just assume it's what works over here will work over there, and you know, scale up without the kind of the real checks and balances. That's
Yeah,
you know,
great.
it sounds obvious, but
Yeah, no, but it's good to know the detail of how that plays out. And Nicolas, I know you'd agree with that in terms of the culture, but you had some, when we were speaking earlier, some more kind of technical things that happened when you were moving over that had a knock-on impact later.
Yeah, so of course we did the same kind of fuck up, like with the first hires. No, I was mentioning before the visa. So that's a very small, silly thing.
There's nobody here from U.S. Immigration, is there? No? American Embassy? Okay. You're safe.
No, but there are like a few tricks that if you know them, maybe we would have done that differently. And there is this visa called the E2, investor visa. And if we had that one, our life would be so much easier today. And we didn't think about it at first, and if we had thought about it, we definitely could have obtained it. So the E2 visa, the big advantage is that you can, once you get it, it's an investor visa. You just need to prove that you invested money from your home country in the US. And then it's a company visa. That means that you can get anyone from your home country coming to your company in the US. You don't have to do any specific process each time. So today we are stuck up with having to obtain a new visa for every single person that we want to hire from France. Basically.
So it's not something you can fix once you've gone down a certain path?
No, you cannot fix it. So you are stuck with like the same as every other US companies. So it's kind of an unfair advantage that you could have as a foreigner. So
and did you get advice when you were entering the market, or did you just kind of read up online and decided this was the way to do it?
No, actually, once because we flipped the company, we became American before actually myself moving there.
Okay.
So we didn't need any visa at the time. So I didn't really think about it. And then, like 1 year later, when I actually moved, basically it was too late. We should have structured the company differently to be able to get that visa.
Yeah.
So I got the advice from the immigration lawyer, but too late.
Yeah.
I should have asked him before doing all the stuff.
Okay, great. Thank you. And those were sufficiently good that I'll share one with one of our investee companies, and it's kind of a technical point as well, but something that was very costly. One of our investee companies set up in the US, like you described, raised capital into a US company, but actually had never linked their European company to their American company, which wouldn't have been a problem if they hadn't taken in money, but then they had taken in money into two different entities. So unwinding that cost them about $200,000, which at seed stage for a company is a pretty big fuck up. Yeah. Great. Well, we'll share our joint penance later on of maybe a few drinks to lament everything that went wrong. So moving on kind of a more positive note to the journey that you went on, I'd like to kind of go back to, let's say, when you had scaled into Athens, you're kind of sitting with your team around the table, you're saying, we're going to take on America, the map's out on the table. What did you do next?
For us, it goes a bit more humble, I would say. I started going there because we had customers. It wasn't like a big grand plan, okay, now we're launching in the US. It was more about, okay, we need to go there more frequently, right? So for us, it was more about going really close to the customers. So most of our customers, like our first customers, were like, Dropbox, Eventbrite, Pinterest, all of them in the Silicon Valley area, right? So we decided to go there and open shop there just because we needed to be closer to these customers and have sales guys there. I think, like we talked about before, if you are more of a sales-oriented company, you need to choose a location that is very close to your customers. If you're more of an online marketing company, more product-based, Atlassian style, fewer sales guys or girls, you can have like more choices. For us, being in the west side and having our engineering team in Greece means a 10-hour difference. So that means when we go to the office at 8 a.m., the Greeks have 6 p.m. It's really late for them, right? And we have, besides engineering, we also have the product guys in Greece. So any brainstorming about the product, any sales, marketing, product, discussions, product market fit, all these customer interactions are very costly, not just because there's very few hours of overlap, but mainly, and this is what I learned and I didn't expect it, is that when you have these discussions, you need to be fresh. When the other person is ready to go home and it's like 6 p.m., it's really, really hard to tell him, you know what, we need to change the roadmap.
And
He's going to tell you to fuck off.
Do you have a co-founder who is still in Greece?
Our head of engineering and head of product is in Greece.
Okay.
And that helped like the team grow really nicely and everything.
Yeah.
And the way that we overcame this is we just bring him very frequently to the US, and he's this...
How frequently?
Like every 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
He's now there for 1.5 months. It's very, very valuable when we do that. In the beginning, it was harder though, because I was there and he was here, and he had to learn just as I did, to listen to the customers more, and it really matters, right? And that wasn't easy. I mean, we fought a lot. Also because of the time difference and what I mentioned before, right? I was so tired, and I went and told him, you know what, the sprint, you need to change what we're doing in the next 2 weeks. It was hard.
Cut the tension on the line. Okay, good. So Nicolas, you had a different experience because you went through Y Combinator as well. So how did that all come about? What was the sequence for you of looking at the US?
Yeah, a strange sequence because we actually raised a seed round in France before to go to Y Combinator. So I would recommend to do the reverse if you have the choice. But we don't regret anything because it was definitely worth it. So in our case, let's say we started directly by targeting a developer market, which is definitely global. You have developers everywhere. So we never had any word of French on the website. It was from day one global, and our first customers were from the US. Then we got that opportunity to participate to Y Combinator, and it accelerated our penetration. We decided to go there, even if we already had raised money, because we believed it would help us to go much faster, to get in the market much faster, and that's what happened. We move.
But to Dimitris' point, if you're a marketing-led organization, developer sale, was it as important for you to move to San Francisco?
It was, but maybe not for the. Same as you. Our customers were in the US. We didn't need to meet them face to face most of the time. So we actually faked our US presence for a long time. Like after Y Combinator, we came back to Paris, and we didn't have any employees in the US like for 1 year after that.
Okay.
We were, however, traveling back and forth like a lot. Yeah. And the big thing there is not only customers, but it's also the ecosystem. Like the opportunity to meet with partners, with like any people who is part of that story. So you would meet with people at Stripe, we are an API, Twilio and so on. So that's where you are going to learn so much more. And the other thing is also the opportunity. Even if you want to meet with Europeans, all of you guys are going to SF at one point of time or another. It's easier for us to meet Europeans in San Francisco than in Europe. Because, every city is different.
Okay, so it's that learning environment, even though the customers, you don't need to meet face-to-face, the learning environment of people doing similar things. It has
similar things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about location. One of my colleagues always talks about SF or die. She only believes in one location. You went New York first and then jumped to San Francisco.
Jumped to San Francisco.
That was once you're already in the US, that was a bold move to make.
Yeah, it was moved the family across, and I remember making the promise to my wife saying, look, we landed now in the US, I'll cut down on the travel, and within a couple of weeks I was traveling to SF to realize everything had moved so quickly in terms of where our customer base was and how we needed to be closer to them and so on. So
So it was customer driven.
It was exactly the same. So same idea. We were a company, founded or based in Dublin, but global ambitions.
Yeah.
US was always going to be our target market. Always where our customers were going to be. Similarly, the concerns, the added bonus of New York and Dublin and time zones, and then San Francisco. Yeah. 8 hours. You have that same busy start of the day, end of the day for both teams.
So it made more sense to base.
Yeah, but it's. I would say the biggest reason is the ecosystem. And I found myself sitting in a pretty cool office space in New York, and there was very little outside the building. You were kind of sitting there. I'm sure things have changed now, but San Francisco, landing there and just an ecosystem, being able to build a network of people that were like-minded. In the space it was refreshing. It was uplifting for the team as well. So
I want to come on to talent, because one of the things around the ecosystem is talent and hiring. And hiring, I think, is probably possibly the most difficult thing to do, even in your home market. So I'm interested, just, we talked about your hiring track record.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's got better over time. Nicolas, in terms of how many people have you hired in the US to date?
We have 15 people in US today,
Yeah.
and 45 in Paris. But we actually, the oldest people out of the 15 are have been with us for about 1 year. So it's still a pretty new office for us.
Yeah, but they're all US hires. They weren't relocated.
Yeah. Most we started to relocate some people from internally in the US. Like we just one of our last hires is coming from Chicago, actually.
Yeah.
But all of the others, most of them are Bay Area based.
How did you go about finding them?
That's so difficult. Recruiters. We actually hired a recruiter internally.
A recruiter in?
A recruiter, someone in the team is actually in charge of recruiting.
Okay, in-house.
We have one in Paris, one in SF, and that's helping a lot. External recruiters too, of course. Hired, we use quite a lot lately. Hired, it's working pretty well.
Would you recommend, so even at 15, an office of 15 people in the US, one of those is a recruiter?
Yeah,
looking back on that, would you recommend other people do that, or?
I would recommend anytime you, let's say, it doesn't really depend of how many you are. It depends of how many you want to become.
Yeah.
If you want to hire even 10 people during the year, do hire a recruiter. It's going to help a lot, not only for sourcing, but also for making sure the experience of the candidates is going to be good.
I think it's important to look at the cost of the mishire. Is really what makes the decision, stack up. We were actually quite fortunate in that we were of some of those hires. For us, we were sales and marketing focused in the US. No better place than American people to be really confident on the phones and sell. But one of the earliest recruiters we found, she was awesome, and she said, "You know what? I really want to get into tech sales. Is there any chance you'll take me on as an SDR?" So she came on as an SDR, fast-tracked into AE, and she was our internal recruiter that we kind of got by chance. And that's all the good hires since then. I'll attribute to this girl.
Oh, interesting.
So fortunate.
Yeah, be lucky. And Dimitris, how did you go about hiring the first people in the US? So, even if you talk about having an internal recruiter, where do you even find, the first 2 people?
Networking, basically. And if I went back in time, I would do much more networking than I did. I think we're very handicapped. When you go to the US, you don't have an already ready-made network. You have the language barrier, you have the network problem. So I would invest much more time in growing my network. But I think the first 2 hires happened through my network of Greek investors there. Then we hired an internal recruiter as well. I think it's super important. Whatever you do, though, external, internal, whatever you do, you need to own it as a founder. You cannot trust anyone else do your first 20 hires, because it's like tools, right? The person who designs the first versions of something, like your team or your office or your space or even your product or your sales engine, it's like building a hammer, right? The person that builds a hammer is the most important one, because then you're going to sell it to technicians, and the technicians will build stuff that will be used for thousands of people. So the person that designs the hammer is the most important person, right? So the first 10, 20 people in your team, even sales guys that are, that you can replace sooner or later, it's very, very important, because they will build the manuals for the next sales guys, the culture, everything.
Yeah.
So you need to spend a lot of time yourself as a founder. Don't be stingy about your time hiring.
I see you nodding a lot there. Because you come from a technical background as well.
I do.
And I find that a lot of technical founders don't like hiring sales teams.
Yeah, of course, that's difficult. No, I was mostly nodding about the fact that you need to have one of the co-founders moving there. That's just critical. Otherwise, it's pretty sure to be done. Yeah. For me, of course, it was difficult to hire sales guys too, because I don't have that background. And let's say that salespeople, Americans, and especially salespeople in America are very good at selling themselves. So there is a big chance of a mishire at first. That's normal. I don't know any European founders who has not done that mistake.
Okay.
Not one.
You'll be in good company.
So
final question, Ray, just on product. many companies find as they transition to the US, there's lots of product changes required. Is that something that's just small tweaks, or is that something that you kind of fundamentally need to step back when you move into the US and say, hey, the requirements might be completely different?
Yeah, I mean, from when we started out, we were building it with the US market in mind, and we thought it was, the product was truly globalized from the outset, and it wasn't until we were actually in market that we started to spot the nuances. So pressing the flesh with customers, and then they tell you, your date format is wrong on this particular screen. You're kind of like, oh, is that really important? No, it is important. Simple, trivial little nuances. One of the ones we got a great laugh internally, but then we realized how important it is to be in market and like to really be close to your customer was. We were giving prescriptive advice to reps around next steps and as part of managing their deals, and we thought it sounded great to say get a date in the diary, as in with a key decision maker. And I was meeting these like alpha VPs of sales and kind of going, he's like looking at me going, what's a diary? Is that like a 6-year-old schoolgirl's book or something? And I was like, oh, I mean the calendar, is that not? No, it didn't translate. So it's just simple things around being very aware of your target customers and the changes that you need to make. For us, we got much more rapid feedback on the product, from particularly mid-market customers, because they'll tell you a lot quicker rather than the enterprise customers. And then they become your biggest evangelists then, as soon as you can kind of be responsive and love thy customer.
Great. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I'd like to thank you all very much. I think there's some good takeaways. Can't shoot the moose from the lodge. As a founder, you need to own the first 20 hires, and be aware that everybody on that journey makes lots of mistakes. So it's just a matter of how quickly you learn from them and how much you kind of rely on other networks to learn.
Don't be afraid to fuck up, because you will.
That makes it all okay. So Dimitri, thank you very much. Nicolas and Ray. The next panel up will be led by Helen Crowley in about 2 minutes. We're just going to hand over the mics. Thanks very much.